In the beginning, before the first dawn ever broke and before time itself had a name, there was only light. It shimmered with a brilliance no human eye could ever comprehend, an endless sea of radiance where harmony reigned and every being moved with divine purpose. In that eternal light stood one figure whose beauty outshone all others. Lucifer, the morning star. He was not merely an angel. He was heaven's masterpiece. His wings gleamed with hues beyond imagination, and his voice led the celestial choirs in melodies that could stir even the heart of the Creator. Lucifer was perfection embodied, majestic, wise, and radiant with the very essence of goddess glory. To gaze upon him was to glimpse the reflection of the divine itself. He was trusted, beloved, and admired by all, the symbol of what creation could be at its purest. When he sang, heaven itself seemed to breathe with his voice. When he soared, the skies shimmered brighter in his wake. His purpose was clear: to carry the light, to magnify the Creator's beauty, and to lead others in eternal praise. But in every light, shadow waits. In every symphony of perfection, a single note can shift the harmony. For within Lucifer's brilliance, there existed something subtle and powerful, the spark of free will. It was a gift from the Creator, a sign of trust, a freedom to choose love, to choose obedience, to choose purpose. Yet within that freedom also lay the potential for pride, curiosity, and the question that would change everything: why must my light serve another? This is the story of how heaven's brightest star began to flicker, how admiration became ambition, and how the bearer of light became the bringer of darkness. It is not just a story of angels and rebellion, it is a mirror to the human soul, reminding us that pride and humility dwell side by side within us all. As we journey through the rise and fall of the morning star, you will witness not just a celestial war, but a timeless lesson about power, choice, and redemption. Every act of defiance carries a cost. Every gift, if misunderstood, can become a curse. Before we begin this powerful exploration of light and shadow, take a moment to support this channel. Hit the like button if you love stories that dive deep into ancient mysteries and moral truths. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our upcoming tales from history, faith, and legend. Now, let us step into the light that once shone brightest in all creation and discover how it became the darkest shadow ever known. This is the story of Lucifer, from glory to curse. Even in the boundless perfection of heaven, where light flowed like rivers of liquid gold, and every note of the celestial choir resonated in flawless harmony, there existed a gift both precious and perilous: free will. It was a choice granted to all angels, from the humblest seraphim to the exalted morning star himself, not as a test, but as an expression of trust, a reflection of God's desire that love be sincere, voluntary, and untainted by obligation. The angels were perfect in form, in purpose, and in their devotion, yet this freedom allowed them to ponder, to wonder, and, in subtle ways, to question. It was a freedom meant to elevate, yet within it lay the seeds of vulnerability, for no being, however radiant, could be entirely immune to the stirrings of curiosity, the whispers of doubt, or the subtle allure of self-examination. Lucifer, the morning star, whose brilliance had captivated the hearts of countless angels, found himself at the center of this delicate balance. His light, unparalleled in beauty and resonance, seemed to embody the very essence of divine glory. Yet the spark of free will that had been a gift from the Creator began to manifest in ways even the angels could not foresee. In the quiet moments between hymns and praises, as the choir's voices swelled in unison and the radiance of heaven bathed every corner, a thought, delicate and almost imperceptible, brushed against Lucifer's consciousness. Why must my brilliance exist to serve another? Could it not shine for its own sake? At first, it was nothing more than a fleeting curiosity, a whisper among the symphony, easily dismissed. Yet it lingered like a gentle ember hidden beneath the surface of a flowing river. The beauty of free will was that it granted agency, the power to choose, the capacity to discern between loyalty and self-interest, obedience and independence, love offered freely or imposed by expectation. Yet with this gift came a weight that even the brightest of angels could feel, a responsibility to navigate their desires without tipping the balance of harmony. For Lucifer, whose radiance drew the gaze of all who beheld him, and whose voice inspired awe throughout the celestial host, this balance became a source of inner tension. The more he reflected upon his own magnificence, the more he began to perceive his light as intrinsic to himself, not merely a reflection of the Creator's glory but a force with its own purpose and authority. It began subtly, in the quiet exchanges between him and his closest companions, the angels who often sought his counsel or followed his lead in song. His questions were not overtly defiant. They were curious, almost philosophical. Does the brilliance we bear belong only to the one who created us? Is our purpose solely to reflect? Or might it be to express, to expand, to rise in its own right? These musings, gentle at first, planted seeds in the minds of those who heard them, ripples across a pond that appeared still to the untrained eye. And as the ripples spread, so too did the notion that the divine order, flawless though it seemed, could be reconsidered, examined, and even challenged. Even the most steadfast angels could feel the stirrings of this latent curiosity. It was not outright rebellion, but the subtle recognition that freedom carried a weight heavier than mere obedience could anticipate. The gift of choice, designed to make love meaningful and devotion sincere, also revealed the possibility of pride, of ambition, of questioning the authority that had given rise to all light. For Lucifer, the morning star, these realizations became a crucible. His mind, radiant and perceptive, began to explore not only the depth of his own gifts but the boundaries of his purpose. He pondered whether his brilliance could exist without the framework of heaven, whether his voice could sing beyond the confines of eternal praise, whether his light might illuminate in ways independent of the Creator's will. It was in this subtle questioning that the narrative of heaven itself began to shift. What had been unquestioned loyalty and effortless harmony slowly transformed into contemplation, internal debate, and the first faint threads of ambition. The spark of free will, intended as a channel for love, also became the tinder for a fire that would one day challenge the very structure of the celestial realm. Lucifer did not act rashly, nor did he immediately reject his purpose. He simply began to recognize the power inherent in choice, the ability to direct his light, the capacity to envision a self that could exist beyond mere reflection. The angels closest to him, who had long admired his brilliance and the elegance of his presence, began to notice subtle shifts, in moments of quiet reflection, in the intervals between hymns, in the expressions of thought shared softly among peers. They glimpsed a curiosity that was almost infectious. Questions once considered unthinkable about purpose, authority, and the nature of service were now entertained with a cautious fascination. And in this delicate unfolding, the balance of harmony remained intact. Yet the seeds of future rebellion had been sown, invisible yet potent, carried in the very gift that had made heaven so sublime, the freedom to choose. Thus, the story of Lucifer and his descent begins not with a grand act of defiance, nor with malice, but with the quiet, almost imperceptible emergence of thought and curiosity, nurtured by the gift of free will. In the brilliance of his light, the beauty of his voice, and the majesty of his presence, there lay the potential for both exaltation and undoing. What heaven celebrated as perfection also contained the capacity for questioning, and what had been a source of awe became the catalyst for the first whisper of shadow. In granting freedom, God had entrusted angels with the most profound power, the ability to choose love or pride, obedience or self-determination, harmony or discord, and in that choice, the story of the morning star would unfold. As the uns passed in the radiant halls of heaven, where every note of the celestial choir echoed with eternal devotion, and every movement of angelic wings painted the skies with streams of unearthly light, the spark that free will had ignited within Lucifer began to gather warmth. It was not a sudden blaze, but a slow, relentless awakening, subtle and insidious, that took root in the deepest corners of his consciousness. His brilliance, once solely a reflection of the Creator's majesty, now felt like an intrinsic force of its own, a radiance that demanded recognition not merely as a gift but as an embodiment of his being. Questions that had lingered like faint whispers in the quiet intervals of worship and song grew louder, carrying with them a curiosity that mingled dangerously with his growing sense of self-worth. Why must my light bow? Why must I shine only to reflect another? These thoughts, innocent at first, began to unfurl into a tapestry of contemplation and subtle defiance, a questioning that shook the very foundation of his understanding of purpose and obedience. Lucifer's mind, ever brilliant and perceptive, began to explore the nature of his gifts with an intensity no other angel could match. He saw himself in every reflection of divine light, in every harmonious note that soared through heaven's vast expanse. And he began to perceive not just the beauty of what he was created to reflect, but the extraordinary potential of what he could become. The admiration that others had long felt for him, the awe inspired by his wings that shimmered with colors beyond mortal imagination, by his voice that could stir the hearts of all angels, began to mirror back to him as a mirror of his own greatness. Where once he had felt pride tempered by devotion, he now felt a surging, unspoken certainty that he was destined for more than servitude, that his light, so singular and profound, might be meant to shine independently, unbound by the patterns of celestial hierarchy. In these contemplations, he began to speak in quiet tones to those angels whose hearts and minds had long been captivated by his presence, not with commands but with musings that carried an almost imperceptible challenge. Have you ever wondered why our brilliance must serve another's will? Are we not luminous in our own right? Could we not aspire to heights beyond those that have been assigned to us? His words, soft as they were persuasive, planted seeds of thought that grew slowly in fertile minds, rippling outward like a subtle current beneath a calm sea. Angels who had never questioned the nature of their existence began to feel an unfamiliar stirring within them, a curiosity that mingled with admiration and an awakening sense of ambition. In his careful conversations, he never forced, never demanded, yet the allure of possibility spread, intoxicating in its subtlety, promising the idea that there might exist a path beyond mere reflection, a way to claim autonomy even in the most perfect realm. The pride that had been latent in his heart now grew bolder. Lucifer began to perceive his beauty, his wisdom, and his authority not as blessings granted but as inherent rights, extensions of his very essence. The melodies he led, the light he bore, and the awe he inspired all became evidence in his mind that he possessed a brilliance that could rival the Creator himself. The admiration of others, once a mirror of heaven's appreciation, now became the lens through which he measured his own significance. In the corridors of celestial contemplation, he allowed himself to imagine a reality in which he was no longer a servant of light but a master of it, a sovereign of his own destiny. As these thoughts intensified, Lucifer's influence quietly expanded. He did not confront the order of heaven directly at first. Rather, he became a subtle teacher of contemplation, a voice that encouraged introspection and questioned convention. Angels who had followed him for generations in unwavering loyalty found themselves drawn into conversations that revealed the complexity and allure of self-determination. His arguments were elegant and compelling, cloaked in reason and wonder rather than defiance. And for some, the idea that their light might shine unbound became a tantalizing possibility. They saw in Lucifer not only a guide but a vision of autonomy, a glimpse of what could exist beyond the unquestioned authority that had long defined their existence. It was in this quiet, insidious spread of influence that rebellion first took shape, not as a grand battle or an overt act of defiance, but as the cultivation of thought, the awakening of ambition, and the subtle nurturing of pride. The morning star's questions, once personal musings, became the whispers of possibility in the minds of others, a slow crescendo of curiosity and aspiration that stretched through the ranks of heaven. And while the halls remained filled with the brilliance of worship and song, an undercurrent now ran beneath it, the gentle but inexorable tide of desire, ambition, and the first inklings of dissent. Lucifer's light, which had always illuminated others, now cast the first shadows of doubt, revealing that even the brightest star could, in its own brilliance, begin to reflect its own ambition, hinting at a rebellion yet to come. In this way, the seeds of what would become the great schism of heaven were sown not through force or malice, but through the quiet and profound assertion of self, the awakening of pride, and the subtle power of influence. The morning star, in contemplating the nature of his own light, had begun to envision a future in which angels could rise not merely as reflections, but as creators of their own destiny. A vision that would ultimately change the course of all creation. The slow and subtle seeds of doubt that had taken root in Lucifer's heart blossomed over time into an unshakable conviction. A fire of ambition that could no longer be contained within the quiet halls of heaven. What had begun as whispered musings on purpose and freedom transformed into a vision of sovereignty. An unyielding desire to ascend above the heights, to rule in his own right rather than to serve. The morning star, whose beauty and wisdom had long inspired admiration and love, now stood as a leader of thought, persuasion, and growing defiance. The angels who had once marveled at his radiance found themselves drawn not only to his light, but to the daring conviction behind it, captivated by the idea that they, too, might claim the brilliance they had long reflected without question. It was not coercion that guided them, but the subtle allure of possibility, the intoxicating promise that they could rise beyond the chains of ordained purpose, that they could become creators of their own destiny, rather than servants of another's glory. Lucifer's proclamation was not sudden. It was the culmination of years of contemplation, discussion, and careful nurturing of loyalty among those most willing to follow his vision. When the time came, he spoke not with malice but with certainty, his voice resonating through the crystal corridors of heaven, a sound that seemed to carry both beauty and authority in perfect balance. We were given light, he declared. We were granted wings, wisdom, and song. Yet why must these gifts bow to another? Why must our brilliance exist solely to reflect a glory that is not our own? I would, and with me, those who share the courage to claim their destiny. We will no longer serve, we will rule. Our light shall be our own, and no throne shall command it but the one we forge for ourselves. The words, delivered with the magnetic force of his conviction, were a spark in the hearts of many angels, igniting a longing they had never before allowed themselves to imagine. Awe, curiosity, and ambition intermingled, and the harmony of heaven trembled beneath the weight of this audacious vision. News of Lucifer's intentions spread quickly, reaching even the highest echelons of heaven's order, where the archangel Michael, the steadfast warrior whose name itself meant "who is like God," stood as the embodiment of divine resolve. Michael, whose presence radiated authority and clarity, recognized immediately the danger that had been quietly growing beneath the luminous perfection of the celestial host. When he confronted Lucifer, the confrontation was not merely of words, but of purpose, principle, and the essence of order itself. Lucifer, Michael's voice rang clear and unwavering. "Your brilliance is undeniable, yet your rebellion is a distortion of what was given. A twisting of gifts meant to honor the Creator, not to exalt the self. You seek dominion not as a reflection of light, but as a shadow over all that is sacred." His wings spread like shields of unyielding radiance, and in his gaze there was both sorrow and resolve. For he understood that the conflict was not just a clash of angels, but a rupture of the very fabric of harmony. Lucifer, unflinching and resolute, met Michael's words with a fervor born of pride and vision. "I do not deny the light that was given," he replied, his wings catching the celestial illumination and refracting it into a cascade of brilliance. "But I will not bow to it as a servant forever. Freedom is not an illusion, and the gifts we bear are not shackles. If we are to shine, we must shine as equals, as masters of our own destiny. I will rise above, and I will lead those who dare to follow me." In that declaration, the quiet embers of rebellion became an inferno. Angels aligned themselves not merely along lines of loyalty or admiration, but along the deeper currents of belief, ambition, and choice. Michael's followers, steadfast in their devotion to the Creator and the order of heaven, faced the growing host of rebels led by Lucifer, whose charisma and vision had woven a tapestry of conviction strong enough to challenge the very hierarchy of the celestial realm. The ensuing battle was unlike anything heaven had ever witnessed. The crystal halls, once filled only with song, now echoed with the clash of will and radiance, with light meeting light in a struggle that was both physical and spiritual. Radiance collided with radiance, wings cut through the luminous expanse, and the very fabric of heaven seemed to shiver under the intensity of confrontation. Yet amidst the chaos, the duel between Michael and Lucifer became the axis upon which the fate of all angels turned. Michael, unwavering in purpose, stood as the embodiment of divine order, his sword a channel of clarity and justice, while Lucifer's brilliance burned with the intensity of ambition, defiant and unrelenting, as he sought to carve a throne from the very essence of light itself. Ultimately, the tide turned, not through the diminishment of Lucifer's power, but through the unassailable strength of principle and unity among those who upheld the Creator's will. With a final, decisive clash, Michael and the forces of loyal angels overcame the rebellion. And Lucifer, the morning star, along with his followers, was cast from heaven. They fell like lightning through the boundless expanse, a cascade of radiant beings transformed into shadows as they descended, their cries of defiance fading into the void. What had once been a realm of perfect harmony was now marked by absence, by the echo of rebellion, and by the memory of light that had dared to defy its source. The fall was not merely a physical expulsion, but a profound transformation. The brilliance that had inspired awe became a force reshaped by pride, and the morning star, once a beacon of glory, began a descent into darkness that would ripple through creation itself. In the wake of the conflict, heaven endured, scarred yet resilient, while the story of rebellion, ambition, and the consequences of free will took root as a cautionary testament to all that brilliance, untempered by humility, could bring. Banished from the radiant halls of heaven, Lucifer's descent was not merely a fall of body, but a transformation of essence, a metamorphosis wrought by pride, defiance, and the weight of rebellion. As he plunged through the celestial expanse, the brilliance that had once reflected divine glory began to twist, to deepen, and to darken, until the morning star, once a beacon of light, became a figure of shadow and resolve, the adversary of all he had once known. The angels who had followed him, drawn by admiration, curiosity, or the intoxicating promise of freedom, tumbled alongside him, their own forms altering as the radiant hues of heaven were stripped away, replaced by shades of crimson and black, echoes of their defiance etched into their very being. They awoke in a realm unlike anything they had known, a place shaped not by harmony and song, but by the raw reflection of rebellion itself, where the light that once guided them had become fire, sharp and unyielding, a kingdom built on ambition, pride, and relentless will. Here, Lucifer no longer bore the name that had once symbolized hope and illumination. He became Satan, the adversary, a sovereign of a domain that mirrored the chaos and anguish born from the choices that had severed him from heaven. In this new realm, the echoes of angelic order were absent, replaced by a dark majesty that challenged the very laws of creation. The fires that licked the edges of this kingdom were not merely destructive. They were reflections of the passions that had fueled the rebellion rage. Pride, defiance, and the unyielding desire to assert sovereignty where none had been granted. Lucifer surveyed this dominion with eyes that burned not with despair but with clarity and intent, understanding that his fall did not signify defeat but a redefinition of power and purpose. His wings, once shimmering with divine light, were now blackened, and the glow of his aura had transformed into a deep, fiery crimson, symbolizing both the intensity of his will and the irrevocable path he had chosen. Around him, the fallen angels became demons, their forms altered to reflect the darkness and determination that now governed them, loyal not out of love but out of shared conviction and defiance. In this court of rebellion, there was no music of praise, no harmony to temper ambition, only the disciplined assertion of autonomy and the careful cultivation of influence. For Satan understood that the war of defiance had only just begun, and its next battleground would be the world that God had created in his image. Turning his gaze toward earth, Satan recognized the potential of this realm as the new stage for the manifestation of his will, a place where the gifts of creation, freedom, and light could be tested, twisted, and challenged. Humanity, endowed with free will just as the angels had been, became the natural object of his focus, for in their hearts and minds lay the same potential for pride, ambition, and desire that had once led him to question the order of heaven. With subtlety and care, he approached the first humans, and Eve, not with brute force but with the allure of knowledge, power, and the temptation of choice unfettered by divine command. In the quiet moments of their innocence, he whispered ideas that ignited curiosity, planting the seeds of doubt as he had once done among the angels, speaking to the desires that lay hidden and unexamined, offering the illusion that their own understanding and ambition could rival the wisdom and guidance of their Creator. Why must you obey without question? Why accept boundaries when your own mind and heart are capable of more? Could it be that you, too, are meant to rise above what has been given, to claim for yourself what is denied? The questions, soft yet compelling, stirred in their consciousness like a hidden flame, awakening a longing that mirrored his own ascent towards self-determination, a longing that would lead them to reconsider the nature of obedience, freedom, and their place in the unfolding story of creation. As Adam and Eve confronted the choice before them, the shadow of Satan's influence loomed, not as a tyrant but as a cunning guide of ambition, reflecting the same patterns of temptation, doubt, and pride that had characterized Lucifer's own fall. In offering the promise of knowledge, autonomy, and the allure of surpassing limits, he mirrored his own earlier path, the one that had carried him from the perfection of heaven to the dominion of rebellion. Their decision, wrought in the quiet of the garden, became the first human echo of the celestial schism, a reflection of pride, curiosity, and the desire to act independently of divine direction. In that moment, the bond between heaven and earth was subtly fractured, and the possibility of shadow entered the human experience, shaping the trajectory of humanity's choices, ambitions, and struggles. Just as Satan's rebellion had transformed him and the angels who followed him, so too did the seeds of doubt he planted in the hearts of Adam and Eve set in motion a dynamic of struggle, consequence, and growth that would define the human condition for generations. Yet even amidst the unfolding shadow, the contrast between choice and guidance, pride and humility, remained a central theme. Satan's actions, though marked by defiance and ambition, highlighted the profound responsibility inherent in free will, a gift that could lead to both greatness and ruin depending on how it was exercised. While he sought to entice humanity into repeating the pattern of rebellion he had once followed, the light of the Creator remained, offering the possibility of redemption, reflection, and the conscious choice to embrace humility, love, and wisdom over pride and desire. In this way, the story of Satan and his turn to earth became not merely a tale of corruption, but a reflection of the enduring tension between freedom and obedience, ambition and responsibility, a mirror of the celestial drama now playing out within human hearts. The fall of the morning star, transformed into the adversary, extended its influence beyond the borders of heaven, echoing through time and space, reminding all of creation of the profound power and consequence of the choices that define existence, the subtle ways pride can mislead, and the ever-present opportunity to choose light over shadow, wisdom over ambition, and love over self-interest. Lucifer's story, from the radiant halls of heaven to the fiery depths of hell, serves as one of the most profound mirrors of the human experience, reflecting the eternal tension between ambition and humility, pride and love. What begins as the tale of the morning star, the most beautiful and beloved of all angels, quickly transforms into a cautionary epic about the consequences of unchecked desire, the subtle seduction of self-importance, and the delicate balance between freedom and responsibility. His fall is not merely a celestial event. It is a reflection of choices that resonate deeply within each of us, a reminder that brilliance and gifts, no matter how extraordinary, are always bound to the moral and spiritual framework in which they exist. The same fire that allowed Lucifer to shine with unparalleled radiance ultimately became the catalyst for his isolation, a burning pride that severed the bonds of community, love, and loyalty, leaving him and his followers in a realm shaped by defiance and shadow. Through his rebellion, we see the dangers of elevating oneself above the source of guidance, of mistaking natural talents, wisdom, and influence as entitlements rather than responsibilities. Lucifer's pride did not simply corrupt him internally. It radiated outward, influencing those who admired him, spreading doubt, and creating rifts where once there had been harmony. His story shows how ambition, when divorced from humility, can transform the most brilliant and capable individuals into agents of their own downfall, their gifts becoming tools for isolation rather than inspiration. In the same way, humanity experiences echoes of this struggle every day, from the subtle choices to act selfishly or with arrogance, to the more dramatic decisions to place personal gain above empathy, community, and moral responsibility. The consequences of these choices, much like Lucifer's fall, ripple outward, affecting not only the individual but all those connected to them, shaping relationships, societies, and the collective moral landscape. Yet while Lucifer's narrative is one of loss, destruction, and defiance, it is also a story that illuminates the path toward redemption, humility, and the conscious cultivation of light. Just as his brilliance was a reflection of divine glory, humanity's potential is not diminished by mistakes or missteps. The capacity to choose, to learn, and to return to the principles of love, humility, and integrity remains ever present. In every moment, we are offered the chance to reflect the light that guides us, to temper ambition with compassion, and to wield influence in ways that build rather than destroy. where pride seeks to isolate and dominate. Humility connects, nurtures, and strengthens, where ambition seeks only to shine for itself. Love allows brilliance to illuminate others, creating harmony instead of chaos. Lucifer's tragic journey underscores this truth with unflinching clarity, illustrating that the very qualities that can elevate an individual intelligence, beauty, talent, leadership can also become instruments of ruin if they are pursued without the anchoring principles of humility, empathy, and reverence for the greater whole. The lessons extend beyond spiritual or theological reflection. They resonate in our everyday lives, shaping the way we navigate relationships, leadership, creativity, and personal growth. Every choice carries weight, and every action, no matter how small, has consequences that ripple outward. Pride, when left unchecked, promises power but delivers isolation. Ambition without conscience may create wealth or fame but can erode trust, connection, and moral integrity. Conversely, humility and love may not always grant immediate recognition or external reward, but they cultivate resilience, deep bonds, and a sense of fulfillment that endures across time. In this sense, Lucifer's fall becomes both a warning and a beacon, demonstrating the dangers of self-centered ambition while simultaneously highlighting the transformative potential of intentional, virtuous choice. Moreover, the story emphasizes the enduring power of free will, both in heaven and on earth. Lucifer's rebellion arose not because his gifts were insufficient or his guidance constrained, but because the freedom to choose, granted by God to all angels, was wielded without wisdom or moral reflection. Humanity, too, is entrusted with the capacity for choice, and within that freedom lies both the risk of error and the opportunity for redemption. Every moment presents the possibility to turn away from pride, to resist the seductive allure of selfish ambition, and to embrace actions that reflect love, integrity, and humility. In this way, the narrative of the morning star is not solely a tale of despair. It is an enduring reminder that even amidst failure, corruption, or moral missteps, the light of redemption is never beyond reach, and the path back toward connection, virtue, and grace remains open. As we reflect on Lucifer's journey from the morning star to Satan, from brilliance to isolation, we are called to examine our own hearts, our ambitions, and the ways in which we exercise our freedom. Are we allowing pride to guide our decisions, isolating ourselves in the pursuit of self-interest? Or are we choosing humility, fostering love, and using our gifts to inspire and uplift others? The story challenges us to consider not only the consequences of our choices, but also the enduring possibility of redemption, the power of returning to the light even after moments of darkness, and the profound difference that deliberate, compassionate action can make in the world around us. Ultimately, Lucifer's fall is both a warning and an invitation, a warning that pride, ambition, and self-centeredness can isolate and destroy, and an invitation to choose differently, to cultivate humility, to embrace love, and to reflect light in a way that uplifts all. It reminds us that while the allure of power and recognition is strong, true greatness lies in connection, empathy, and the courage to act with integrity. His story is a mirror of our own struggles, a testament to the choices that define us, and a beacon showing that redemption, grace, and the light of humility are always within reach for those willing to seek them. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the rise and fall of Lucifer. If you found this story compelling and thought-provoking, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to explore more epic narratives, timeless lessons, and powerful stories that resonate with the human experience. Your engagement helps us continue sharing stories that illuminate the mysteries of light, shadow, and the choices that define us all.